Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the PVP podcast, the show where we talk about real estate, business, and everything in between. And today I got Brent Lindstrom sitting down with me, and Brent is a man that wears many hats. I mean, general contracting background, film, and even a background in finance. So there's many directions that this show can and will go today. But I mean, without taking too much from him, Brent, thanks for coming to sit down and chatting with me tonight.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to dive into this.
Yes, awesome. Now, for the listeners who don't know, because I read your bio, but for those of you them listening who might not know you, give us a little bit of insight on who you are and where you came from.
Okay, yeah. So let's start at the beginning. So I'm from Utah, and I grew up learning how to work hard. It was,
Yeah.
I had a paper route before I hit my teens, and when I hit 13 years old, I became a framer. So I started actually building houses. And I know that's below the minimum work age, but hey, when your family's all in the construction trades, it's easy
Yeah.
to get a job. So
Oh
I
yeah.
so yeah, I started framing, and I circulated through all the different trades at a very young age, got a lot of experience, became very handy, and realized before I was out of my teens that I never, ever wanted to move into the construction industry. But I still ended up going that route. When I was younger, I wanted to be a filmmaker,
Yeah.
but when all you know is construction, it's easy to kind of get pigeonholed into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I did a few other things. I served a proselyting church mission. Then I went to college, and while in college, I decided to study finance so that I could keep myself out of the construction industry.
All right.
When I graduated from college, I knew I needed to get my MBA or wanted to get my MBA because I planned on working on Wall Street. So while I was going to go get that MBA, I decided to go back to the family business, do some more construction, at which time I was a general contractor. So I started managing bigger projects. And along the way, I figured out basically how to invest in real estate and started incorporating that into my life. But also at the time, I was still making pretty low income when I first started doing that after I'd gotten my finance degree. And I decided I'm going to try writing a book to generate some side income. That didn't generate any side income, FYI. I don't know if you've ever self-published any books, but
I have.
your first book, yeah,
I have. Yeah.
quality needed a little craft and needed to get my name out there too, and neither one were forthcoming. So I did get addicted to writing though, and that's one thing that I have to be thankful of during that
Mhm.
time. And while I was doing that, I decided, you know what? I'm not ready to become a full-time writer yet or artist or anything, and so I need to put together a plan. I need to figure out how to become financially independent, and I need to figure out how to tell a compelling story. So I put
Right.
together this plan. It's like a 10-year plan, and I said, this is the plan I'm going to make. This is going to get me financially independent. It's going to get me good at telling stories, and we're going to move on from there. And hopefully by 2025, I will be able to go full-time at this.
Yeah.
And 2025 came, and I went full-time.
Amazing. Amazing. And there's just so much to unpack from your introduction here, but the one thing I want to touch upon right away is the importance of having a plan, right?
Right.
I think that when it comes to goals and plans, a lot of people underestimate them and maybe don't take them that serious. And I always say to people, make goals, but it's good to have them in your head, but it's even better to have them on paper.
Right.
Take the time to physically write it out. And people have a hard time making a 1-year plan, a 3-month plan, a 6-month plan, but you made a 10-year plan, which is usually people make 5-year plans. I've heard of 5-year plans, but you specifically made a 10-year plan. Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
The
So,
mindset behind crafting it.
yeah. So at the time when I decided that I want to go full time as a writer, I thought, you know what? I'm not at the place where I need to be. And I was reading a book, and I can't, oh, who was the name of it? I can't remember. If you're into self-help books, you'll know who this is, I'm sure, but he's the guy who talks about creating a self-improvement plan, or I don't remember his name. but anyhow, I read this book. I bought into it. I was like, you know what? This is something that I need to do. I want to just continually work on self improvement. And what this guy teaches is that you look at your life, you figure out the different items in your life that you need improving on, and you work at them every day, and you follow up every day, and you follow up every year, and you make the new goal. And it was a very goal centric type of a thing. And I thought, you know what? My goal, I'm going to do this. I'm going to work on improving myself. I'm going to work on improving these other things. My still ultimate goal is to become a writer. And at the time, filmmaking was starting to come into play a little bit too. And I was like,
Right.
you know what? I'm really interested in turning this into a visual medium. But here's the thing, writing, you can write a book for pretty cheap. I mean,
Yeah.
it still has costs in it, especially when you start hiring editors and start factoring in marketing and your actual time involved. But when you jump up to making film, then your budget needs to go a whole lot higher. I mean, like magnitudes higher. And
Yeah.
so I started thinking, there's no way, even in a couple years, that I'd be able to afford this. And so I started taking some of the principles that I'd learned there, and I said, you know what? I'm going to make a long-term plan here so that I can be in a position to do both, writing my books and turning them into movies. And so that's kind of how I thought of making a 10-year plan, is that, I was already on a path of self-improvement, and so I needed to work on a path that would allow me to have the financial capability of making movies too.
Right.
So yeah, that's how the plan got its origins, its genesis, I guess. But yeah, and it evolved a little bit along the way. And as I learned more, I added more to the plan. But I did set a goal, a target goal financially of where I needed to be. The storytelling crap, that would be easy to fit in there, but the financial end of it, couldn't ignore that. It was a big chunk of change that I needed to have in place at the end of year 10, because I mean, I could have made a 1-year plan, but I didn't know how to reach the number mark that I needed at the end of year 1. I needed to spend year 1 learning how to make money so that I could start doing that in year 2 and 3 and 4.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so did your like finance, when you got into finance for a brief period, I imagine that would have came into play when you were making your plan, right? When it comes to making money and budgeting and projections. And like, these are parts of a plan where a lot of people that I meet say, hey, yeah, like I'm going to get into business and I'm going to go, full time, right? Or I want to go full time by this date. But they forget the financial aspect to that, where budgeting comes into play, projections, like just crafting it into that plan. Would your finance background have helped in any way for
Absolutely.
that part of the plan?
Absolutely, but probably not in the way that many people might think. So,
Okay.
college, like I said, I got my finance degree in college, but then I also went on to get my MBA. Now, there's only a handful of classes that I can actually look back to and say, I learned some valuable things there that I can carry forward in my daily life. Most of it was learning how to deal with professors, deal with people, how to see things from their perspective and cater my
Yeah.
life to, my work to satisfy them. And then when I went into the MBA, it became even more so. In fact, probably the lesson I learned most getting my MBA was learning how to learn. So the specifics on finance maybe didn't come exactly from the schooling I got there, but kind of as a side effect of the schooling. It taught me how to think more clearly, how to evaluate things more. And yeah, like I said, there was a few things. Economic classes, definite help for me. Corporate finance, I loved those classes. Things that people would probably roll their eyes at and fall asleep on. I love those kind of classes. There was a bunch of other classes maybe I didn't care so much for, and I don't remember hardly anything on. I remember sleeping through calculus and the professor getting really ticked off at me, mostly because I sat on the front row, but that's a different story. But no, so those helped me learn how to think a little bit. What
Yeah.
I would suggest to somebody is, you don't necessarily have to get a finance degree to learn finance. You need to treat your life as a business, not just your work as a business, if that makes sense.
Right.
And so learning how to run your business, aka your life, is incredibly important. Learning finance is a skill that I think that any artist or independent or entrepreneur should learn. And for me, it was a hobby. I loved learning about money and how to make it and how to keep it and how to grow it. And the finance degrees, those were more of just being born out of my already existing, uh, I guess, desire to learn about money. Did I
I
even
don't
answer your
think,
question?
yeah, no, it did. I don't think that when it comes to money, I don't think a lot of people catch on to the fact that they have to learn about it, right? I think that, like you mentioned earlier, working hard, right? And I'm raised from a hardworking family too. So all I know is to work hard.
Right.
But there's also a saying, right? If hard work paid off, the donkey would own the farm. As we see time evolve, like the way when I look at time in the last 20 years, manual trades like general contracting, plumbing, electricity, these trades, at least where I'm from here in Canada, there's a shortage of manual labor.
Yes.
There's a shortage of manpower in these trades. Why? Because the trend for the last 20 years has been gravitating towards, IT, online work, you know, mobile work, working from home, and anything from a computer, where it's like now, you can make the same salary sitting at home working from your computer and not talking to anybody as you can being a plumber or you know what I mean, or a tilesman or something. And I think that certain people understand, how money works,
Yeah.
and certain people don't. And a lot of people that I speak to, the common denominator seems to be they've all read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was the eye-opening thing on them, giving them some sort of insight on how money works. But some people have an earlier exposure to that.
Right.
Right. So, but I think it's a valuable skill because being in business and being an entrepreneur, the paycheck doesn't always come in every week.
No,
Sometimes it doesn't come in every month. Sometimes it might skip a month, right? But the bills and the expenses never skip months, right?
interest
And that's
never
where
sleeps.
financial literacy comes in. No, and that's where financial literacy comes in, right? So I think I think that having a finance background, right? Or I think that anybody in business should have some sort of base knowledge on accounting, financial accounting to a certain extent if you're going to run a business, because I think that that's the backbone of being an entrepreneur, being in business. And that's interesting though, that, like you said, you had no desire, because I don't really think people have a desire to. I think it's something that I think at one point or another, if you're an entrepreneur, you're forced to learn about it, you know?
Right.
And so let's talk about your passion for film. It's been a
Sure.
lifelong passion,
Yeah.
I imagine.
Yeah, it has. I mean, I love watching movies. I love watching
Me
things like
too.
that. I mean, the funny thing is I call myself a filmmaker, but I don't actually watch a lot of TV or movies, but
Right.
I still love it. I love the art form of it. I love the way that it can just grab me and completely
Yeah.
silence the rest of the world and pull me into a new place. And I love that I can have the opportunity to do something like that also. And so
Right.
yeah, I mean, writing was great and I still love writing. I write every day, but the thing is I'm not happy with just writing. I want to tell stories in so many different ways, and I like telling stories verbally. I like telling stories visually, and maybe it's a little ADHD, I don't know, but I love the ability to move across different types of storytelling and share with other people kind of the things that excite me, that kind of spark my imagination. I mean, how many times you watch a movie? I mean, this was a thing, I guess, growing up. We'd all come to school on Monday and tell each other about the latest
Movies.
Simpsons episode we just watched the
Yeah.
night before, the newest one that came out, and it was just so fun to rally around a story like that, and
Yeah.
that's kind of it's never really left me. I just love talking about story and wanted to always make it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely understand that. I love film myself too. I definitely love film. So with that being said, we're going to dive more into about the love of film, but we're going to take a quick break from our sponsors.
Inspections. Mercurio is a trusted and experienced inspection firm known for their thorough, professional approach and attention to detail. They specialize in providing clear, easy-to-understand reports that help buyers, sellers, and investors truly understand the condition of a property before making important decisions. Their commitment to transparency, accuracy, and reliability makes them a valuable partner in any real estate transaction. Our trusted partner since 2018.
Hey guys, and welcome back to this episode of the PVP podcast. So, Brent, before we were talking about, the love of film and everything, and I think that's a common thing that we share. I love film, and I love film from the 70s, I'm a horror movie buff. And for me, the best slashers were made between 1970 and even before that, is Psycho, and up until the mid 80s, I love film. I love everything about it. And I love some of the times, that's captured me the most when it comes to film is for example, I'm thinking of two films in particular where there's just so much to the scene, but there's not much going on. I don't know if you know what I mean, right? Like there's so much to the scene. For example, I think about the movie Perfume. I don't know if you ever heard this one.
I don't think
And
so.
so it's based in the olden days in Paris, and it's about a perfumist who's off to perfect scent. It's actually has a little bit of a suspense twist to it. It has he becomes a serial killer, but he's off to create the perfect scent. And there's this fantastic scene where he's just smelling something. And for about 6 minutes, there's just soft music in the background. He's not speaking. There's no dialogue. He's just smelling the perfect scent. And it's like even now talking about it, I'm getting goosebumps because I just remember how intense that scene was when there's not much going on, right? And I think that I'm no filmmaker, but I think that, to be able to deliver a scene that impactful with that minimal, that amount of minimalism is fantastic filmmaking. Now, what's your favorite type of film?
So my favorite type of film is kind of the family fiction type of films that are still made for adults, but they're clean fiction, basically.
Yeah.
But I mean, what you were saying reminds me of like the Studio Ghibli type movies, Howl's Moving Castle and different things like that. I mean, you get these. I get what you're saying when you just get immersed in something and maybe time slows down or they don't really do
Yeah.
much, but it just lets it seep into you. And I love it when filmmakers have the boldness to actually do something like that because right now everything is so fast paced. But
So
oh,
fast paced. Like the
I
Fast and the Furious, there's 10 of them out, and it's just that for me is hard to get into that,
the
you
scene
know?
changes are like the strobing lights, and you start having seizures just
Yeah,
from
it's just hard, because I think that for example, if you think of Leonardo DiCaprio when he won his best, and he was always a front runner for best actor, and he was in a bunch of fantastic movies, Titanic, Man in the Iron Mask, Gangs in New York, and he won for The Revenant. And people were saying, well, he doesn't talk through half of the movie because he got mauled by a bear. Well, that's why he won, because I think, it takes a lot more skill to deliver so much intensity and emotion without actually delivering so much dialogue or action or, there's a whole artistic background to it, right?
yeah, the more you can show rather than tell. I mean, I
Yeah.
think American cinema is full of talking, whereas you start going
Yeah.
foreign films, then you start getting a lot of just showing, which is really fun too.
Right.
But yeah, you also asked what my favorite stuff is, but like this will help you understand me in a couple of ways. So my favorite two movies out there are the old Disney's Swiss Family Robinson
Okay.
and the James Stewart Harvey.
Okay. That one I haven't heard of. Harvey.
It's a black and white one. If you
Okay.
haven't seen it, I mean, it is by far one of just the best feel good movies out there. It's funny. It's a good one. Harvey.
Yeah. No, I'm going to definitely check that one out. So, I mean, you've obviously had this passion for a long,
Right.
and it's something that never really left you. You mentioned it earlier. I mean, I like that because a lot of people lose passion and they lose that I don't want to say hook, but they lose that grasp of that one thing that they really enjoyed, in your case being film, right?
Right.
Or music, like what was I don't want to ask what made you hold on to it, but you know what I mean? Keeps you holding on to that part of yourself and your passion for film.
That's kind of a tough question because I don't know if there's any one thing specifically that keeps me holding on to my passion for film. It's just such an addicting thing for me. Some people want to go out and play video games, and some people I mean, good on you if you love playing video games. I would rather make the video game. Some
Right.
people like watching football. I'd rather play football. I can't
Right.
stand watching it. I'd love to play it. And
Yeah.
it's the same thing with movies. Yes, I love watching them, and this is one of the ones that I probably have that exception where I love watching it and I love making it. But I'd just say that my imagination is always getting away with me, and I just want to write it down. I mean, I'm a builder. I do construction.
Yeah.
I want to make stuff, and I want to make stuff that maybe nobody's seen or nobody's done before, and I want to share that. I mean, that's kind of what art is, and yeah, I don't know how I keep the passion alive. It's just always there. It's always wanting to be brought out. And I guess I'm at a stage in my life. I'm in my 40s now, and the first half of my life I was scared of my own shadow. And the second half of my life I said, "You know what? Why should I care what anyone thinks about me? I want to live the life that I want to live." And so, yeah, that's when I basically said I got to do this.
Yeah. And at what point did you decide to let go of that fear?
I don't know. It's
Like,
kind of
what
a
was the
it's been a
breaking point?
yeah, it's been a progression, I guess you could say, but
Right.
I would say that one of the biggest catalysts was getting married to the woman I'm with.
Okay.
So my wife I mean, everyone in my life has always been very supportive of me and whatever I've done. I love my parents. I love my family. I can't fault any of them for my shyness, but when I got married, it's kind of like you have almost two faces, you've got the face that's around the people who you've known your whole life. They expect that of you, or at least you expect them to expect that of you. And so it's really hard to come out of your shell. But when I got married to my wife, I was me the whole time I was with her. I didn't have to pretend to be anyone else, and she loved me for it. And when I'm around her, I can continue to be me, as goofy, as silly, as imaginative as that is. Whereas growing up, all my friends, if I brought all of that out, they'd kind of look at me sideways and be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
whatever." And so that
Yeah.
has a depressing effect on you. But my wife, she always was accepting of me whenever I was being a goof off. And I guess it emboldened me, and it made me realize, why should I worry what anyone thinks? I've got a partner who loves me for everything that I am. She sees all sides of me. She sees the side of me that everyone else knows. She sees the side of me that I am around her, and I can just be completely open around her. And it was like, life's too short to bottle yourself up.
Yeah. It's way too short to bottle yourself up and keep yourself frozen. You know what I mean? And not see, a lot of people make this mistake in life, and I find it quite sad. They don't allow themselves to, explore that passion or go after the things they really want or do the things they really want out of fear, out
Right.
of fear of what people are going to think, out of fear of like what the way they might be perceived, right? But then the minute that they realize that restricting themselves is not living by their standards, it's living by society standards or reality standards, or how you think you should be living and existing versus how you want to be, right?
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting conversation too, because a lot of people, when you bring up this personal freedom and things, a lot of people, I think of the value system that they're being freed from. I don't have to live under those restrictive values that maybe my parents brought me up under. I can go explore whatever, and I don't really think it's like that at all. I think it's more of a personal thing, because I'm a very value driven guy. Like, I still follow the same belief systems and values that I grew up in. I love the church that I grew up in, but I when I think of my own personal freedom, I don't necessarily care to break away from that. What I'm talking about is breaking away from your own personal roadblocks that keep you from expressing whoever you are. And I like in all of my fiction, since I'm a very value-driven person, I do clean fiction. I love clean fiction. I have a passion for my faith and things like that. So I'm not giving up anything. I'm just adding to what I already have when I think about that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so you've basically learned how to be content. You know what I mean? And like be satisfied. Because I think that, like, for example, somebody would have stayed in a finance job for security
Right.
or a general contracting job for security. They wouldn't necessarily go after their passion.
Right.
Right. So it takes a very certain special mindset to be able to do that, or character or personality, or however you want to explain it. Right. But not everybody could definitely let go of, like something stable to pursue a passion.
Well,
Right. Even though I
yeah.
think more people should.
Well, everything involves risk, and a lot of people, depending on their level of risk aversion, keeps them in certain places. And, that's all fine. It just really depends on what your dreams are and what your goals are, and if you're willing to risk for those dreams and those goals.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that you should always go after your dreams and goals.
Yeah.
I think that first and foremost. But I think that before you do, you should have a plan. And your 10-year plan, that's why I was so struck by it, because I know the importance of, before I got into real estate full time, I was doing restaurants and bartending and waitering and then at one point I said, I need to just go into it full time. And I've been doing this full time for 10 years now. But when I got into it, I didn't learn about the importance of a plan until 2 years later, when I said, you know what? What's the one thing I haven't done that keeps coming back to haunt me or people, Well, I haven't basically made a plan for the longest time. Haven't operated with a business. I operated by the spaghetti method. I don't know. Have you heard of the spaghetti method?
I think I
Throw
have, but I can't remember it.
throw a bunch of wet spaghetti at the wall
Oh,
and
and see
see
what
what
sticks.
sticks, So, but then I started putting together a plan, right? And that's why your 10-year plan is fascinating, because without a plan, you have no real direction. It's like a pilot taking off without a flight itinerary, a route, nothing. Just what do we do once we're in the air?
Yeah, and I think there's actually two sides to this equation too, because I think a plan is probably half of the equation and action is the other half of the equation. One of the lessons that I learned growing up, and it's been a valuable lesson, it wasn't actually one that happened to me, but it was one that happened to my dad, and he shared it with me, and it's always stuck with me, and I'll share that with you. So he was a stockbroker at E.F. Hutton,
Okay.
and he joined them, and they gave him the opportunity to work both salaried and commissioned. They basically said, we know that you're not going to find the clientele that you need right away, and so we're going to supplement you with a salary until your commissions take over that salary, and you can really start flying. And he got going for a while, and it was going all right, but his commissions weren't getting high enough to ever replace that salary and get to the goals that he knew he needed. So what he ended up doing was he went to his bosses and he said, guess what? I want you to cut my salary entirely. And they did. They cut his salary. And you know what happened? His commissions skyrocketed, because
Yeah.
all of a sudden it gave him that make or break motivation. It said, I'm jumping off the cliff now and I have to make this work. And so he did. And I think that a lot of us, yes, we need a plan, but at the same time, we need to also probably take out some of the safeties that are holding us back.
Yeah. Well, because you can't really, like when I think of what you just said, there was the analogy that I heard about, do you know why we repot plants? And because by putting a plant in a bigger pot allows it more space for the plant it wouldn't have been able to grow if you didn't repot it.
Exactly.
Hence the salary story.
A perfect analogy.
Yeah. So like, do you see yourself switching careers again?
So I used to always think that a career was never a lifelong thing. I always figured maybe 8 to 10 years in a job, and then I could maybe look at pursuing something new. So when I was doing the construction, it actually worked out fine because I started out actually swinging the hammers. Then I moved into managing the people who swung the hammers. I still got out with my hands too, but then it moved into real estate development, which, it's a progression, but they were different steps along the progression, and not everybody makes those different steps. But I had a clear path that I could follow in that, and I learned a lot doing that. And then going into the storytelling side of things, that was a major switch.
Yeah.
And I would say by the time I finish up 8 to 10 years in this one, it's going to be putting me in my mid 50s. And at that point, who knows? Maybe I'll find something else. But my guess is because all the other things I did were things that I did to make money. They were things that I did
Right.
because I needed to. And the learning about money, I loved doing that. And that one's been a staple all through my life. Learning about money and how to invest and trade it, that's always been a staple. The storytelling, that's always been something I've been passionate about. And now that I'm actually able to make that my career, I,
Yeah.
I'll be surprised if I want to leave that one in 8 to 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that it's a long answer, but the current prevailing thought is that I will probably be doing this until the day I die.
Yeah. And you mentioned something, right? And like I said, most people would have stayed into general contracting or financing because, you say yourself, I didn't really want to do it, but I did what I had to do.
Right.
And as is the case with, 90% of people who don't follow their passion. So, I mean, for the listener out there who's working a 9 to 5, sitting behind a computer, working on a job site, building a house as a general contractor, or, even working in finance, who has a passion that they're not exploiting because of the fear or because of them doing what they had to do, just like we spoke about in this episode, what would you offer them as advice?
I would first ask them, where do they want to be? And, maybe give them a 10-year thing. Say, in 10 years, where do you want to be? What do you want to be doing? And if they say I want to be doing more things with family, great, then let's figure out how to get your financial freedom to where you can leave the job more often. If you want to have a different career, if you want to be your own boss, different things like that, then it depends on the goal and it's very personal. It's really hard to tell anybody what that is, but if they've got a 9 to 5 isn't bad for a lot of people. A lot of people actually enjoy the 9 to 5, but it all depends on where your goals are. And say your goals aren't where you're at or where you want to be, then set that 10-year goal and then set incremental goals to lead up to that. So make a plan. Say for year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, I need to hit these milestones so that I can hit that area. And a lot of people don't want to put in the work. So many people, they want to take the easy path. I know there's a big thing against hustle culture, against working hard. And I really take issue with that because I'm a hard worker and I love to work. I enjoy working. And, I don't want to be in the construction industry, but sometimes I want to pick up a hammer and build something. I
Yeah.
still enjoy actually putting in the time and the effort. And the same as if you need to reach a goal, put in the time to learn how you need to do what you need to do. Put in the time to study it out. I mean, still work hard at your jobs. I mean, don't give up your day job just because you want to be an artist or something. When I started doing this, I was making $45,000 a year and I was saving most of that money up and investing it. I wasn't using it up on frivolous things. I was living off rice and eggs, the two cheapest things that you could eat and still stay alive on. And I did that for years, saving up and investing. And eventually you hit the milestones that you need to hit in order to reach that big 10-year goal. And so, yeah, put in the work, save up your money, learn how to invest your money, and you can get there, but it's got to be goal driven.
And you gotta be goal oriented too, right? Like you have, and I like when it comes to goals, I like to say making smart goals,
Yeah.
specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely. And people underestimate the importance of short-term goals that lead to a long-term gain. right? They often make big goals, but forget about the little small actionable steps in between now and that big goal,
Yeah.
right?
And there's things that you can do all along the way that maybe you don't think about or want to do. But if
Yeah.
your goal is strong enough, if you don't want to give up the coffee, I don't know. I mean, how
Right.
much can you save if if you give up that coffee every day? I used to drink a 12-pack of Dr. Pepper every single day, and I gave it up so that I could save
Yeah.
more money. I used to eat out every single day. I gave that up so that I could save the money. I mean, there's sacrifices sometimes
Sacrifice.
that you do need to make, and anything worth achieving is worth sacrificing a little bit for. But I would mention one thing that I would never sacrifice on, and that's the
Tell me.
relationship with your spouse.
Yeah.
Because if everything went to pot with my wife and me, then I'd be ruined. I mean, she is, if you fail at your family, it sets you back in every kind of imaginable way, financially, emotionally, spiritually. It sets you back and it gets really hard to achieve your goals. So always make your family part of your plan and part of your goal.
I love that. I love that, and I think that, a man's success is measured by how much his family loves him and the relationship that he has with his family. And I think that, and there's also a saying in the business world, right? People tend to trust more men that are married than somebody who's not married. You know what I mean? And I think that having a family is a blessing. So I love that you threw it in there. I love that you threw it in there. So for our listeners listening, as a final send off to them, is there anything you'd like to say or offer to them if they're listening in right now and they've connected with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to learn more about me, I have a YouTube channel where I talk about things, or you can visit my website at lightmindedarts.com. But one thing I would offer you guys, just because I'm a self-published author, I mean, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm an independent entrepreneur telling stories, and most people don't really know who I am yet. And so I want to
Yeah.
let you know who I am, but I don't want to just say, go out there, buy my book, because really, how do you know that my books are any good? I don't really know that I want to make you throw away your money on a risk like that, because, you work hard for your money too. So I want to offer you my latest novel. It's latest at this recording. It might not be when when this is published, but one for the money, two for the soul. Go to my website at lightmindedarts.com, fill out my contact form, and mention this podcast, and I will send you a free ebook version of this book. Try it out. See if you like my style of writing. I've been working on my craft for a long time, and I think I'm doing a pretty good job, and I want to share that with you, and hopefully if you like it, you'll review it and you'll come back for more.
Amazing, amazing. And Brent, thanks for sitting down and having a conversation with me. Really easy, flowing conversation. I appreciate you taking the time for coming onto the show. For anyone who's listening in, guys, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Instagram, Facebook, or our YouTube channel, be sure to hit the like, comment, follow, or subscribe button. Until next time, take care, everyone.